Hi, I'm AnneNewmark and I'm going to be talking to you about how you write to get what you want. It's a very big subject. You need to think about what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and then after all that, there's the end of it, there's the detailed stuff to get right, like punctuation. So what I'm going to give you is some tips and a quick run through of things to consider, the sorts of things that lots of people tend to overlook, things to consider when you're writing to promote your business. What I tell you will relate mostly to online copy, but the principles are relevant to all your marketing material. So what I'm going to do is to introduce you to some techniques that you can use to implement what you already know makes good marketing sense. So you know, for example, that you want to be writing about the benefits rather than the features of your product or service. And if you're providing a service, whether that's a business or a consumer service, you know that you should be writing lots of material, lots of what they call content to position yourself as an expert in your field. So what I'm going to look at is how you can use words to present those benefits and that content in a way that best engages your customer. So my first tip is you get personal. What I mean by this is you start out by visualizing a single customer rather than your entire market. Because when we talk or write one-to-one, we express ourselves very differently from the way we do when we're talking or writing to a large number of people, and people respond accordingly. So as soon as you do that, there'll be an automatic shift in your language. So for example, you will start writing things like you rather than people like you. You would say, we hope you will, rather than we hope everyone will. And perhaps as a small business owner, you may find, rather than small businesses often find. And automatically also, you will be much less likely to fall into what I call the any trap. Just to give you an example of that, I found online, a beautiful cigarette lighter priced at £175. I'll just read you the wording used to sell that. It reads, "Covered in studs, this stylish glass cut clear square lighter is a unique addition to any home, with a luxurious contemporary style that would look superb in any sitting room or study. A great gift for any man. This lighter would also make an ideal birthday present or housewarming present." Now, if I was paying £175 for a gift for a man in my life, I'd actually want to know that I'd like some assurance that it was right for him rather than right for any man in any room. So be warned, if you try to talk to everybody, you end up talking to nobody. One big organisation that got this spectacularly wrong was Marks & Spencer's. If you cast your mind back to the year 2000, they were in the doldrums and they launched with great fanfare a campaign that was going to restore restore St Michael to its former glory, exclusively for everyone. They spent £27 million on ads over 4 years, and the results were not good. By contrast, somebody who got it spectacularly right was, amazingly, 100 years ago, General Kitchener, recruiting troops for World War I. Your country needs you. Amazing. If you think of all the things that he could have said about Britain being at war and needing troops, what he did was to talk directly to you, very powerfully, making anybody who looked at that poster really feel that they needed to go straight away and sign up. So when it comes to you and your promotional writing, what I suggest that you do is to help you to do what General Kitchener achieved there is to recruit an imaginary friend to help you. Not an imaginary friend like you had when you were a child, but a customer. So if you have several different products or services which you're selling into different markets, you may need several imaginary friends. But for each one, what I suggest you do is to really focus on one person, to maybe make a little notebook with a photograph and to note what they like, what they dream of, what they aspire to, what keeps them awake at night, and then you will automatically start writing in a way which resonates with them, with what they like, what they aspire to, what they worry about, and you'll present your offering accordingly. Because what you're trying to do in engaging with your customer is to broadcast on what we call WIIFM, what's in it for me. Because people are looking for what they want and what they need, and they're not interested in you, even if you are talking about how committed you are to providing to providing a great service and in whatever you offer them. So you need to present whatever you're offering from their perspective. An organisation that got this very right with a slogan, for example, was the Financial Times, no FT, no comment. They knew very well that their target market, what really mattered to them was was having something to say about what was going on in the world. What would worry them would be not having something to say. Very clever. So, to apply it to your writing, let's say, for example, you're a web designer. Intuitively, you might be tempted to say something like, we're passionate about offering a first-class web design service. Broadcasting on WIIFM, the way you should angle it is perhaps more along the lines of boost your business with an efficient new website, because that's what the customer's looking for. They want to boost their business, that's what matters to them. To give you another example of an organisation that got this particular tactic wrong, have a look at Avis. We try harder. I'm sure I'm not the only person who reads that and thinks, well, bully for you, Avis. It doesn't tell me as a customer what I want to hear. What you want to be doing is always looking at ways, as you broadcast on WIIFM, of drawing people in. One technique you can use is to try to use verbs. Compare, for example, let's take two driving schools. The AA, their driving school slogan, I'm not sure if either of these are current, but they've had a slogan on their cars, for the road ahead. Compare that with the BSM slogan, learn to drive. Learn is a verb, it's so much more direct, it draws the person in. You go to BSM, what are you going to do? You're going to learn to drive. So instead of listing the benefits of what you're offering, which is obviously one step better than listing features, try angling the benefit that you're offering using imperative verbs. I don't want to turn this into an English lesson, but what I mean by the imperative verb is the command form of the verb. So for example, learn how to, or get insights into, or save time. The temptation often when you want to make people aspire to what you're offering is to use superlatives like outstanding, unique, ideal, perfect. Try and steer clear of those. They just sound like puff, they boost your ego. Instead, turn it round to the customer perspective and use terms like imagine how, conquer your, and you'll never have to whatever again, because. And another good little tip is when you've done a piece of writing, do a quick check, run through, count up all the I's and we's, total those two, and compare it with the number of U's. If you've got more I's and we's than U's, you need to have a little look at it. My next tip is to keep your passions to yourself. So don't go following Avis and talk about how hard you try, and don't talk about our fictitious web designer and say how passionate you are. Keep your passions to yourself, because they're a customer turn-off. People won't buy from you if you're lackluster about your offering, but you need to enthuse them, not talk about how passionate and committed you are. Because people who are searching online or looking through any sort of marketing material are only interested in themselves and in finding what they want. So as a general rule, avoid talking about yourself and how long you've been in business, etc., except on the About page of your website. And I'll talk about that later. Think of it this way. If you've got your search engine optimization right, and search engine optimization is a whole big subject in its own right, but if you've got your SEO right, then somebody who lands on your site is potentially in the market for what you're offering. Just the same as, for example, my teenage daughter, when she walks into a Gap store looking for a jumper. If she finds the right jumper at the right price point, she's going to buy. So what does the Gap sales assistant do? He doesn't walk up to her and say, hi, Gap's been in business for 17, however many years, and we're passionate about making great jumpers. What he or she does is to direct her, to try to help her to find what she's looking for. And that should be your aim with everything that you write on your website or any other material. And so my next tip is to give away as much as possible. Again, content is a huge subject in its own right, and it's most relevant if you're selling a service rather than a product. You need to position yourself as an expert, and that is not by saying how clever you are, or how committed you are, or how great your service is, or how long you've been inquiring your experience. It's about sharing your expertise. It's about writing tips and advice and going out of your way to demonstrate your helpfulness rather than talking about your helpfulness, so that when people need somebody in your field, automatically you're the one that they turn to. My next tip is to write killer headlines. Another great big subject in its own right. There's so much to say about what the art of what blogger John Morrow calls sex, lies and the art of commanding attention. You only have to look at tabloid newspapers to see that there are words that work in headlines. And the received wisdom is that we're all subject to some 4,000 messages every day. So you and your headlines have got to work incredibly hard to grab your customers' attention and inspire them to read what you've got to say. So at the end of the day, writing welcome or thank you for visiting on the homepage of your website just won't cut it, and that is one huge understatement. Then when you come to your call to action, again, it's all about presenting the benefits from the customer's perspective. Let's have a look. Wherever possible, again, it's those imperative verbs that you need to think about. Use verbs that stress the benefit of compliance. So, for example, send me my free tips rather than subscribe or submit. Next tip, you watch out for what's said about you. Here I'm talking about the About Me page. And I hope it is, if you're a sole trader, it should be about me, not about us, unless there's more than one of you, or you say something about the people you partner with. Don't use the royal we. It's it's funny, people still chuckle about Maggie Thatcher saying we are a grandmother decades after she said that, and yet they happily write about themselves in the plural on their websites. And also, please, no third person. Again, it's a crazy, pompous, ridiculous habit that's grown up on the internet. But more importantly, it's a crazy waste of your opportunity to talk directly to your customer in your voice so that they can get to know, like, and trust you. Because remember, you may well be offering something that's really similar to the competition, and this is your chance to engage with the customer and make them feel that they want you to coach them, you to give them nutritional advice or design their website or whatever it is that you do, rather than somebody else whose offering, whose service may perhaps in many ways be quite similar to yours. You need to let your personality really shine through, but make sure what you say is about yourself is interesting. So avoid cliches like starting with how long you've been in business and things like that. My next tip is to keep it simple. I have 3 key simple rules. Number 1, write so a 12-year-old could understand. Apple do this brilliantly. Number 2, guide your audience through a complex subject as if you were taking them on a bus tour of a foreign city. So you take in one point at a time as you move towards your destination. And point 3, make sure none of your paragraphs have more than 3 sentences and none of your sentences have more than 25 words. As my favourite advertising copywriter Dave Trott says, complicated isn't clever, it just looks clever to stupid people. So for maximum readability, you want no jargon, no industry buzzwords, no acronyms, and no longer words where a shorter one will do. A lot of people, as soon as they start writing rather than speaking, think they need to use longer words. Always go for the shorter one wherever you possibly can. No lines with more than 66 characters, including spaces. Traditionally, newspapers have always been written in really narrow columns. That's because newspaper printers know that people scan the page. Whereas because of the shape of our screens, web pages have evolved to have much wider columns. And those are, even though we know people scan web pages, they're very, very difficult to read. We only have a few seconds before when people are scanning down to see if they can find what they want before they click away when they don't find it. And final tip, again, this is more of a design issue, lots of white space on the page. Makes it easy for people, also makes it easier for people to scan. And so, on to my final tip. You need to keep it clean, by which I mean no mistakes. We copywriters are a bit anal, we all have our own pet hates, but perhaps what I find most frustrating is that people don't realise the impact of their mistakes. If you have a long sentence that's not properly punctuated, the worst that can happen is that customers don't actually understand you. They don't get what you're talking about. Or the errors detract from your credibility. If, for example, you're walking down the road and you see a greengrocer's blackboard and he's got lots of stray apostrophes in his potatoes and his tomatoes, it doesn't make you think you won't go and buy his produce. But unfortunately, if you see stray apostrophes on a website, unconsciously, if you spot them, that gives you that little message that this person's unprofessional. So my advice to you is to check rigorously, and I have a little suggestion for how. First of all, whenever you've written something, print it out on a page, hand it to somebody who hasn't had anything to do with your writing up until that point, and get them to read it out loud to you. As they read, listen to them very carefully and make notes, because if you have got something that's too complicated or sentences that are too complicated, you will hear it in their intonation. Then get them to turn the page over and ask them to tell you what it's about. And this is a great way of really looking at your writing through fresh eyes, because you will pick up then what they've understood and how well you've actually explained the concepts. You may be quite surprised with what has struck them in what they've read. Okay, so then next stage, give it to somebody else to proofread. If you do have to do your own proofreading, leave it for 24 hours, otherwise you'll have no chance of spotting your own errors. Better still, give it to a professional proofreader. After 24 years of copywriting, I still give mine to a proofreader. And that's it. If you'd like any more tips, please get in touch. Keep an eye out for my workshops. Email me, it's my email address, or give me a call and I'll be happy to help. Good luck.